I'm Peter Theron. I'm working to be your true representative. I have a bachelor's in statistics from Princeton University. I have a PhD in mathematics from UW-Madison. I've lived in Madison now for 30 years. I teach at the college level statistics, computer science, and mathematics. All of those disciplines mean that I have the ability of looking at the large picture, pulling out the important elements, and fashioning a solution from those. So with that problem-solving skill, and also I take to Washington the persistence and the work ethic that got me a PhD. I ran in 2008, and at that point I was concerned about Medicare. It was unsustainable then, and it's gotten $2 trillion worse. As a mathematician, I know what comes after trillion. As a conservative, I'm not going to tell the liberals. So what we have is an entitlement problem. The entitlements of Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid to some extent, all need to be reformed. They have made promises that cannot be kept. The reform plan that I would work to implement is the one put forth by Paul Ryan, his Roadmap for America's Future. The basic outline of that is to grandfather in those who are 55 and older. I'm 53, so I don't make the cut. And then for those folks, as much as possible, nothing changes. But for those who are 54 and younger, we have to do something different because the promises that currently are made by Social Security and Medicare cannot be sustained. So what we would be moving towards would be, on the Medicare side, HSAs, health savings accounts with high deductible catastrophic coverage. On the Social Security side, we would be moving towards a 401k kind of system. Again, allowing people to ease into it gradually as we can, but because the promises being made now cannot be kept to those who are less than 55 years old. It just will not happen. That's one plank. The second plank is we have a government that is spending too much. 40% of the current federal budget is borrowed, and that's going to mean that our children and grandchildren will be economic slaves to Chinese masters. The situation is so bad that House Democrats haven't even bothered to put forth a budget resolution this year. Tammy Baldwin cannot budget. All she knows is tax and spend. There I would be working towards rolling back spending to the 2007 level. That's the last budget that the Republican Congress had. That budget at that point had a deficit of $162 billion, which is a lot of money, but the current deficits are 10 times greater. So as one congressman put it, we've gone from annual budget deficits of $162 billion to monthly budget deficits of $162 billion. And that's pretty much all spending since the Democrats took over Congress. Rolling that back would take us a long way. But still, at 40% of the budget borrowing, that means we have to cut significant programs that may be effective, but we cannot afford. We have to say, okay, let's live within our means there. And I'm willing to take the spears for that. Every instance I have, I'll talk about cutting spending. But when I'm in DC and do that, or propose to do that, you all know the letters to the editor and the protests I will see outside of my offices from the Madison liberals. Now, I've lived here for 30 years. I came here, the first thing I did was vote for Ronald Reagan. So I'm still a conservative after 30 years. I can take it, but as just a lone congressman, you know, the will of the district, you have to be the other side to that, saying, okay, we know there are people who are going to advocate for more spending, whatever it may be. And then you have to be the advocates for less spending, because that's the only way we're going to be able to actually push it through. Saying, yeah, because just a lone congressman saying, okay, I want to cut this program. Well, the people who are beneficiaries of that program, for them, that is the most important dollar that is spent. And frankly, everybody's going to have to take a haircut of 40%. So folks say, well, you can't cut my XYZ. Well, okay, then you tell me something else that gets eliminated completely. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to greater than, give someone greater than 60% of what they're currently getting. It's if we start cutting programs completely. And every program's got beneficiaries, and that's why cutting programs is always hard. But that's what we have to do. So we have entitlement reform, we have the reform of spending, and then we have the reform of government itself. For 80 years, we've had the liberal program, where it's often referred to as the ratchet. They will push through a certain number of liberal programs, and the conservatives and Republicans will beat down some of them. Happened with Social Security and the New Deal. At the end of World War II, the Republicans repealed a number of the New Deal aspects, the industrial control aspects, but then they left Social Security in place. And we went for another generation, and then we had Medicare. That was put in. Well, again, that's now grown to be a program which is completely unsustainable. Now we have Obamacare, we have the nationalization effectively of the banks, nationalization of student loans, nationalization of the auto companies. Well, if we don't rescind all of that, we're just working on the ratchet. So we have to start looking at reforming those entitlements and repealing Obamacare, the financial regulations. It's another 2,300 pages that no one read before that went through. To give you an idea of how much that's going to kill the economy, early in the Bush administration, there was Sarbanes-Oxley, which was regulation of corporations, which was supposed to prevent any meltdowns. Didn't work so well in the next, in 2008, in part because Sarbanes-Oxley didn't apply to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Well, these financial regulations also don't apply to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So what are we setting ourselves up for? Same thing all over again. So we need to take a look at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Again, sacred cow programs. People love them. They say, oh, but you're against, you don't want to have housing. You don't want people in houses. You know, we want people who can afford to be in houses to be in houses. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, we're allowing people who could not afford it to quote unquote buy a home. They didn't really buy it because they were just essentially borrowing it from the bank. And when the times got tough, they couldn't make the mortgage. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac need to be privatized, need to be split up, and certainly need to be put under the financial regulations that everything else is under. We don't know what's in but Sarbanes-Oxley had only 16 regulations, 16 rules that came out of it. The estimation on this financial regulatory bill is it's got 253 regulations coming out of it, 253 new rules. And Sarbanes-Oxley has caused companies to go overseas. Every time I go on Sly's show, he always beats me up about companies being traitors and moving off to Bahamas and so forth. Well, those companies left because in part Sarbanes-Oxley made the cost of doing business in the U.S. too high. This financial regulatory bill is going to chase the rest of the companies. The ones that are multinational, where it makes sense for them to leave, they will leave. And we're already seeing hedge funds in Connecticut and elsewhere saying, I don't really have to be in the United States. And if this comes down, I'll leave. And when those companies leave, the tax revenue that they provide goes with them. So we have to realize that while casting the financial sector as villain is something that plays well politically, our president has picked out villains, one right after the other. But it doesn't play well economically. If you demonize businesses will go where they're wanted. And so we need to recognize that and say, okay, it may feel good to demonize a business, but that's not going to cause new businesses That's going to simply add to the uncertainty. But folks who do have money are not going to want to move forward and actually start a business. They're going to say, wait a minute, I don't know what's coming. I've got a tax bill that's going to get huge.